Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod.
Many things are happening that are exciting, very exciting for our country.
Not even inaugurated and making big waves around the world.
He's not president yet, so none of it
I know,
is really...
but he's going to be in 12 days.
President-elect Trump on annexing Canada and Greenland and the Panama Canal.
What do you take seriously?
Axios' Marc Caputo says pay attention to it all, just in case.
By now, we had, 12, 13 years of this. We should realize it's both. You have to take them literally, you have to take them figuratively, you have to take them seriously, and sometimes you have to take them unseriously.
Plus, the rest of today's stories that got us squawking, like those big changes at Meta.
We never wanted to be the arbiters of truth. That's always a hard position to be in.
Facebook's first general counsel, Chris Kelly, weighs in on the new approach to fact-checking and moderation online.
More speech is the answer to difficult speech.
It's Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin, and let's see how things are shaping up.
We are watching quantum computing stocks, and let's tell you what's going on. Sinking in extended trading. This follows some of those comments by NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang during an investor Q&A call. He shared his outlook on the timeline for quantum computing advances. Take a listen.
Kind of said 15 years for very useful quantum computers. That would probably be on the early side. If you said 30 is probably on the late side. But if you picked 20, I think a whole bunch of us would believe it. But what we're interested in is we want to help the industry get there as fast as possible.
He also issued a warning to companies who are building, quote, general purpose computing. He said the era of coding by hand is over. He also said that every single data center is now going to be built differently with accelerated computing and machine learning capable machines. Shares of NVIDIA, let's show you where that stands right now. Now at about $142. It comes after a 6.2% slide yesterday. His product presentation was viewed as significant in the long term, but lacking short-term upside, according to some analysts, including one at Stifel. Meantime, take a look at shares of Palantir. They fell as well, about 8%, 7.8% yesterday. Now down about 14% for the week. On Monday night, several funds from Cathie Wood's ARK Investment Management unloaded nearly 200,000 total shares of Palantir. That comes as Morgan Stanley initiated coverage of Palantir with an underweight rating and $60 price target. On Monday, the analyst said success is more than priced in, with Palantir trading around 160 times earning, and that stock at 68.85.
I mean, it was, I think, one of the best performers last year in the S&P 500, if you look at what happened with that stock, too. So maybe not surprising to see a pullback after a much longer upward march, at least over the last
And that was really
months.
a combination of just all of the geopolitical issues in the country,
Yeah.
plus then you add, in the world rather, I should say, and then you add
The election.
Trump on top in the election. And I think there was a view that Palantir would be a massive winner,
Right.
depending on how you think the DoD budget and everything else gets recalibrated.
Firefighters battling overnight against a wildfire that forced evacuations in the Pacific Palisades neighborhood in Southern California. Nearly 50,000 people have been ordered to evacuate, and thousands more have been told to prepare to leave. Strong winds have fueled the spread, carrying embers that ignited spot fires throughout the region there. Isolated wind gusts as strong as 100 miles an hour were expected to hit the mountains and foothills overnight, according to the National Weather Service. Those winds are expected to remain high throughout early afternoon today. Schools are shut across the LA metro area. Nursing homes have been evacuated. You've probably seen the pictures at this point of what's been happening with people trying to evacuate, trying to get out through one road, being forced to abandon their cars, and then bulldozers having to come push through those cars to get them out of the way so first responders could get through.
Some shots from inside people's homes.
I
With
saw that
people
too.
still in them.
Nice houses, too.
Yeah, with flames whipping up around.
I think Malibu, a lot of people at this point have been asked to exit that entire area, which I know pretty well. A lot of, you think of Malibu, you think of the blue ocean, but there are beautiful canyons all on these beautiful golf course, a lot of great real estate, kind of scary. President-elect Trump held a wide-ranging news conference at Mar-a-Lago yesterday. Among the highlights, Trump slammed President Biden's restrictions on offshore drilling. He promised to revoke the order on day one, even if it requires going to courts. Trump reemphasized his desire to bring Greenland under U.S. control. He made the comments soon after his son, Donald Trump Jr., arrived with other representatives in Greenland yesterday. Trump also slammed late former President Jimmy Carter for selling the U.S.-built Panama Canal to Panama. He said the canal was currently under discussion. When asked by a reporter if he could assure the world that he would not use military or economic coercion in his effort to bring Greenland and the Panama Canal under U.S. control, Trump quickly said no. Trump also said again he hoped to turn Canada into an American state, arguing the U.S. is paying far too much to its northern ally. He said he'd consider using economic force to bring the country under U.S. control.
You said you were considering military force to acquire Panama and Greenland. Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire Canada?
No. Economic force, because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. I love the Canadian people, they're great, but we're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it. We're spending hundreds of billions a year to take care of Canada. We lose in trade deficits.
He later posted this image on Truth Social with the comment, "Oh, Canada." Outgoing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau posted on X that there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the U.S. Elon Musk responded, "Girl, you're not the governor of Canada anymore, so it doesn't matter."
The governor?
What you say.
Right.
Governor of Canada. That's
governor of a
what
state.
Trump's been calling him for a while, governor of a state. The Greenland thing.
But what do you think's going on here for real? And I
think it's a bit of the Trump doctrine. I'm not going to spend a lot of time worrying about it and thinking about it. I like my hair. I want my hair to stay. I'm not going to set it on fire every day, like so many people.
But what do you take seriously, I guess, is the
I take seriously that Greenland is a really strategic piece of land that if we could, we've done it many times in the past. It sounds ridiculous, crazy now, but cobalt, lithium, graphite, shipping areas, and access to the Arctic, which we're trying to right now.
Denmark claims control of it.
Oh, I know they do. Yeah. And Russia used to control Alaska, and
Alaska,
that was Seward's
but
icebox.
Russia sold this to it.
Well, that's what we're talking about. I don't know. We'll see what happens. As I said, I'm not going to start ringing my hand.
You might use military.
Well, he didn't say he would. He said he wouldn't rule it out.
Wouldn't rule it out.
Right.
But
I don't know whether I believe it. As I said,
to me, it's this fire hose of information and
it's also
news that you're trying to figure
Trump
out and
doctrine.
What what is real and what is not, what he takes seriously,
right.
what's a negotiation.
You don't know what's in negotiations. You don't know what he's trying to set himself up as. Things are going to change in terms of our standing in the world. You look at China and Russia. You look at how they view Taiwan. You look at what Putin's done. We're not saying there's going to be an invasion of Ukraine or something like that. But in a world that maybe people have perceived America as being weak, I think he's trying to, at this point, say things are. There's a new sheriff in town.
I appreciated the message he sent to Hamas yesterday at the same time, which was probably the most significant thing, saying if you don't have some deal that's put in place to release these hostages by the time I'm here, all hell is going to break loose.
But then the question is, what does all hell break loose mean?
To me, the bigger issue is
means all hell will break loose,
how do you prioritize?
Is language.
Yeah, but how do you prioritize and how do you take seriously?
What's the red line? What was the red line?
And how do you say this is what we really care about? And by the way, totally understand sending a message like that to Hamas, why we would aggravate and irritate our northern partners who have been really good allies for a long time. I would just put them in different camps. That's what
depends on whether
Leisman
says trade deficits don't matter with other countries. Canada benefits greatly from, and we benefit also from their natural resources.
Petroleum.
I don't take that as serious. I think that's sort of just, I think that's almost like tweaking. It's almost like
I think so too, but it's weird to have all of those things that you just spin after you hear every one of these.
He's not president yet, so none of it is really.
but he's going to be in 12
days. But then
days.
we'll look back. I mean, I lived through the first 4 years.
Yeah,
I'm fine. I think everybody else was fine. Everybody else was fine in the first 4 years. I'm not.
I got a different one for you.
What's that?
So during the press conference, there's the whole conversation about Facebook.
Is this going to be a good thing or another scary negative thing about Trump?
I don't know.
Okay, you go ahead. All right, because I know you don't want. We didn't do much of this during the Biden administration, but go ahead. What are you worried about?
I'm not worried about something.
Oh, okay, good.
It's a business question about what a business leader or business will think in reaction to this. So, Mark Zuckerberg clearly takes the side of the president, changes so many of the policies, personnel, as Dana White, all of this kind of stuff, and suggests that he's doing this because he believes in this stuff and thinks it's genuine. He's saying that he's right. You saw him on. Yeah. Right. He's saying it.
We're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X. The fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
And by the way, there's been a question about whether we, meaning the public, are supposed to think that he's, kissing the ring or bending the knee or whatever. Then the president comes out and is asked, is he doing this because of the threats that you have made to Meta? And he says, this is the president, says, yeah, probably.
Meta, Facebook. I think they've come a long way. I watched it. The man was very impressive. I watched it. Actually, I watched it on Fox. I'm not allowed to say that.
Do you think he's directly responding to the threats that you have made to him in the past?
Yeah, probably.
And I wonder whether if you're sitting as a CEO in America and watching that, you're saying, he's not giving me credit for anything. Or is he going to give him credit for this? That is actually a very interesting question.
Like they say,
I'm not worried about it.
It's Trump, but
but this is actually the fun for CEOs and businesses. This is a fundamental question.
Free speech is one of the most important things that we have in the country, and I want all companies to adhere to free speech and not censor things that they don't like laptops and lab origins of viruses, and none of this stuff. Anything negative on immigration can't be on Facebook. All these things were banned from Facebook. So if Trump says, I'm for free speech and I want all voices to be heard, and then Zuckerberg says, okay, right, I'm going to do what the president said.
By the way, that's not what he said to him. He said that he was going to put him in jail at one point, I think. If you are violating key provisions of what we believe in, then there's these threats, even though they may be a complete hyperbole.
But I guess your question is, what does it mean for CEOs and how will they behave?
I think the question is, I think there's a lot of people who've gone down to Mar-a-Lago and let's call it, they've kissed the ring, right? And they're hoping they're kissing the ring. And I think a lot of them believe themselves that they're kissing the ring for the right reason, meaning that they actually have changed their position or not, or maybe we're giving too much credit for that. I don't know. But then to have the president come out and say, actually, yeah, he's doing it under duress.
Except for that, here's the difference. The president wasn't reaching out and putting that on Truth Social, doing it unprompted. A reporter asked him a question.
Yeah, totally.
He answered honestly.
By the way, it was a very honest answer.
Yeah, what a concept. Right. We haven't seen a lot of that.
But it is interesting because I think there is this calculus that takes place in many corporate leaders' heads trying to figure out how to navigate, because this is what they do. They navigate administrations here and around the globe, and this is them trying to figure out the calculus. It's going to be a different president.
Here's the presidency we're still under right now. So this is what we hear from the guy who's still in charge. You want to talk about a snowball's chance in hell? He didn't have a snowball's chance. He can barely put one foot in front of the other. This was never going to. I'm just saying.
You got your guy. You should be very happy.
I am happy, but I just wish we had this same micromanaging of everything that was done for the past 4 years. It was totally outrageous. I just wish we would have had the same introspection from skepticism and looking at everything from the mainstream media that we're now having for this new administration, which isn't even in yet.
We talked religiously about how this guy wouldn't take a meeting with CEOs in America, and that was a problem.
After he finally couldn't put two words together in a debate, it didn't happen till then.
We've been complaining about that for 4 years on this show.
Oh, God. Biden got a free pass for 4 years.
We don't need to revisit.
Now you don't want to relitigate. There was some great press coverage for the 4 years of Trump. Nothing for the 4 years of Biden. Just like a free pass on the most outrageous stuff. Now we're going to be back to doing this every day. That's why I say I like my hair. I can't go through it again.
Tease will be next.
Still to come, the reverberations of Facebook's choice to do away with third-party fact-checkers. We'll check in with the company's first chief legal officer on this shift.
It's a return to a free speech tradition that we very much tried to respect, even as we did more content moderation in the early days of Facebook.
This is Squawk Pod.
Stand Andrew by in 3, 2, 1, cue.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, along with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick. Got a whole bunch of big stories this morning, perhaps a couple of biggies. Meta Platforms announcing it's going to end its third-party fact-checking on its services and move to user-generated systems of check marks similar to the Community Notes program on X. CNBC's learned that some Meta employees took to the company's in-house communications tool to voice their displeasure, although criticism didn't account for all of the posts. One worker said it appeared Meta was sending a message that facts no longer matter and conflating that with a victory for free speech. Joining us right now, Chris Kelly, Facebook's former chief privacy officer and former general counsel. He's the founder of Kelly Investments. And let's just start with the basics. What did you think when you first heard this announcement?
In many ways, it's a return to a free speech tradition that we very much tried to respect, even as we did more content moderation in the early days of Facebook. Cleaning up the ability to communicate and being able to, easily present one's views was a critical part of the network from the beginning. And in some ways, Mark clearly feels that we've gotten away from that, and this change is meant to effectively.
But where do you stand on this issue? And the reason I ask is, I think there's a question as to has Mark's mind evolved, or was this is always where Mark's sort of head was? And maybe with some of the people around him, and I'm thinking of the Nick Clegg's and Sheryl Sandberg's and others that pushed him in another direction. What's the sort of genuine view of this?
Well, I think you have to create a space that allows people to communicate effectively, and that requires some ability to push back. In the American free speech tradition, that is usually with more speech, and not in taking too much down. And we never wanted to be the arbiters of truth. That's always a hard position to be in. But you have to make sure that your community doesn't decline into a cesspool of accusations back and forth all the time, and of the presentation of misinformation either. The AI tools that Facebook has deployed and Meta has deployed over time on all of its networks still operate here. And there will be addressing of child sexual abuse material, of illegal content, things like that.
Chris, a huge part of the decisions in the past, I would say, were business decisions. Business decisions based on at least a view, maybe wrongly, but a view that advertisers wanted this kind of control over the platform, or at least people were telling Mark Zuckerberg that. The question now is whether advertisers will stick with the platform. Very interestingly, I would argue to you that X now is obviously a much broader platform today to the extent that it's more free speech oriented, but it hasn't necessarily worked as an advertising platform.
I do think that advertisers are going to continue to express their opinions, and they're not going to want to have their brand advertising in particular appear next to offensive material. And I think that will continue to be a piece of pressure on the company, just as it is on X and on every other platform. So I don't think that this will actually end up making a massive difference in your day-to-day experience on Facebook.
So you don't think it changes. Do you think that the experience on X has changed?
I do think it has, and we'll see if that works for advertisers over time. I think that there's some encouraging indications that there's some adaptation that's going on. I think the Community Notes feature is excellent, and it's been implemented very well.
What did you make? I mean, there was sort of an interesting moment yesterday during the Trump press conference because, on one side you saw Mark Zuckerberg take to Facebook and Instagram announcing all of this. And I think making I hope, genuine argument. I'm sure there are people who question how genuine it was. But then, of course, later in the afternoon, and saying that he was doing it in part because he thinks that politically the country has moved. And then, 3 hours later, you have Trump being asked whether he's effectively doing this genuinely or whether he's doing this because of the threats that have come from Trump. And he says, yeah, probably. It's probably because he's doing it under duress.
I did see that, but I do think, and having been there in the initial discussions, we always wanted to adhere to the American free speech tradition, which is more speech is the answer to difficult speech. That it was meant to, Facebook is meant to be a place for discourse, and the de-emphasis of political content and the ability to express yourself is something that I think that there's some regrets around the way that was implemented, right, particularly in the post-COVID period.
How do you think this changes the regulatory story for Meta? Meaning there's an FTC
I think it probably makes
there's a whole bunch of state well, I don't know what you think is going to happen to the attorney generals, but there's a whole bunch of regulatory issues that are around Meta right now, and the question is whether you think they disappear.
Well, I don't know. I certainly don't think they disappear. I think that there's going to continue to be a bunch of discussions. And I think that the company has tried to act very responsibly around addressing some of the worries about harm and self-harm material that's presented online, some of the controls that they've tried to introduce, particularly on Instagram and teen accounts and things like that. This has always been an incredibly complex problem. There isn't really a right answer at the end of the day, unfortunately, for the company or for everyone online. You're dealing with expression, which is a messy thing that sometimes people are right, expressing themselves in ways that are hurtful to themselves or to others, and you have to figure out a way to guide a discussion so that it's civilized and that people get a lot of right, value. That's one of the key things that they're trying to return to.
Chris, Andrew and I were having a discuss yesterday, and I was thinking about it at home. Because Andrew was saying you thought maybe section whatever it is 230, that you should get rid of it, and then I said I think I was saying that about Andrew about like protections for like teens that are getting like naked photos shared and they should be liable. I don't think I ever meant it for like the free flow of like news or information or things like. Is there a way to separate it?
Well, prevents them from being liable for anything that's posted on
I know,
service,
but it seems like you'd have to do it in a way where certain stuff you are liable for, but airing news that may or may not, you can't know when you're airing something. Laptop, for example, the lab origin of a virus. You can't know.
Well, you would just be you would be subject. It doesn't mean you can't.
But you don't want people.
It means that you can have people come after you to say, "Did you have malicious intent when posting?"
But the bullying part and all the horrible stuff that happens on social media to kids, they have to take responsibility for that. But those are separate issues, aren't they? Free speech versus actual nefarious intent to harm people.
One of the most interesting things about the Section 230 debate that people have often neglected is that it actually allows you to take action against harmful material online effectively. And one of the reasons that I always thought it shouldn't be changed is precisely because of that. You have effectively a safe harbor for some things that you're doing to address those problematic pieces of content, for addressing clearly illegal content like child sexual abuse material and some of the revenge porn things that have gone on online. And you can still go after that, prosecute. The company can still take action about it. And it actually is sort of encouraged to do so by the protections of Section 230. So that's been a kind of a misnomer over time.
I feel like it would be stronger. Chris, they're yelling at us. We got to go. But I feel like it would be much stronger. If 230 didn't exist, it would be much more pressure on companies to make sure that they were going after them, not just encouraged to do it, but you're in trouble if you don't.
I think you're still in trouble if you don't. There's certainly a lot of regulatory pressure on addressing it, even under a Section 230 regime.
Chris, come on back. There's so much more to talk about with this. We really appreciate it. Great to see you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Next on Squawk Pod, Greenland, Panama, Canada. President-elect Trump has floated U.S. expansion. And Axios senior politics reporter Marc Caputo says, as wild as it seems, we should take Donald Trump seriously, at least sometimes.
Unlike in administrations and campaigns past, Donald Trump has a staff and structure around him that says, well, if Donald Trump says it, then we'll try to make it happen.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod from CNBC, where we're digesting yesterday's hour-long news conference with President-elect Trump.
The Panama Canal is a disgrace, what took place at the Panama Canal. They laugh at us because they think we're stupid, but we're not stupid anymore. We need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen.
Here's Andrew Ross Sorkin.
President-elect Trump renewing his call to gain U.S. control of Greenland, also the Panama Canal, maybe even Canada. Yesterday, he declined to rule out using military and economic coercion to achieve those goals. Joining us right now with more on all this, Marc Caputo is a senior politics reporter for Axios. Good morning to you. We were debating a little bit of this earlier in the broadcast, Marc, and I think we're all trying to figure out how much of this we're supposed to take seriously, how much we're supposed to take as sort of Trump doctrine, a negotiating posture of sorts. How do you view it?
One of the things that was said in 2016 is not to take Trump, or that his voters didn't always take Trump literally. They took him figuratively. I think by now we had 12, 13 years of this. We should realize it's both. You have to take him literally, you have to take him figuratively, you have to take him seriously, and sometimes you have to take him unseriously. So the short answer to your question is, I don't know. I don't think any of us knows. The likelihood that we're actually going to acquire Greenland in some way, shape, or form when we've got trillions in debt and a huge budget deficit is pretty slim, considering the narrow margins in Congress, because after all, Congress will probably need to do something about taking over new territory. But nevertheless, Trump wants to do this in some way, shape, or form. And unlike in administrations and campaigns past, Donald Trump has a staff and structure around him that says, well, if Donald Trump says it, then we'll try to make it happen.
Well, how much is it worth, Mark? I mean, I wonder what the blue book is. And you remember,
No idea.
If it's not that much money, I disagree that the budget deficit wouldn't allow it. It certainly allows us to expend a lot of money on other things, like help for Ukraine, help for other places.
Sure.
I don't remember what we spent on Alaska, but it was called a folly at the time. I think it was. Do you remember what it was? It was in the millions. I don't even think it was in the billions when it happened. And one of the great purchases, obviously, of all time. And Greenland, if it could be done, if you could, we talk about coercion, make them an offer they can't refuse. What does that mean exactly?
That's a good question. Well, in the case of Seward buying Alaska, Tsarist Russia wanted to sell it. In the case of Greenland, Denmark right now doesn't want to.
$7 million.
Yep. I'll take two, right?
Exactly.
But in the end, it's not just whether we can afford it or not. It's whether Congress thinks we can afford it or not. There are very narrow margins in Congress. It's just difficult to see. That doesn't mean that Donald Trump isn't serious about it or, grading on a Donald Trump curve, whether he's seriously musing about it. But we should take it seriously. And once he's began talking about this again, remember, he discussed this in 2018 and 2019. People have to take him seriously about it. His campaign does, or better said, his administration
does. But let's sort of walk through the various component parts of what was said. So there's the Greenland piece, which it sounds like if he could purchase it, he would. The question is, if he couldn't purchase it or couldn't afford to or something like that, would he use military force to somehow get it? That's one piece. Then there's the Panama Canal, and then there's Canada as the 51st state in the United States. What do you think is even realistic there? And let's just even talk about the political implications of all of this, which is to say the way Canada, for example, or even the folks in Panama right now are reacting to all of this.
They're about to, I live in Miami. My county commissioner, Kevin Cabrera, is about to be the ambassador for the United States to Panama. And so he's going to have his hands full. I do think that out of the three scenarios you laid out here, Trump is most concerned about Panama, not only because of China's presence as a global power, trade superpower, but also because of the Darien Gap, which is the only land bridge connecting South America with Central and North America, therefore. And that has been a major migrant throughway. And so Donald Trump, who is keenly concerned about trade, about China, and about immigration is looking at Panama and is very concerned about it. So I think out of the three that we've discussed here, that is the most likely for him to devote more time, policy, and resources toward.
What about the Canada piece, though? Because they are our neighbor. They have been an ally, a great ally, and there are now concerns. You read the papers in Canada, turn on the TVs there. I was reading or seeing some video that was coming across on social media, and it sounds like they're apoplectic about what's happening.
I imagine they are. I mean, Canada, for its entire history, has lived in fear of its barbaric brother to the south, the United States, invading it and taking it over. It opted not to become part of the United States, even though a number of our early founding fathers and our early presidents wanted it to. The conservative leader of Panama, and I must say, or better said, of Canada, whose last name is French, and I therefore can't pronounce it because I too am one of these barbarians, he's even discounted this. So this one is a little harder to see out of all of them. The Greenland piece is hard for me to see. The Panama piece is less hard to see out of all three.
Mark, real quick, just finally, and you were talking about the people around him wanting to help him accomplish these things. There was a sense in 2016 that there were people around him who didn't want to help him accomplish things
Correct.
that he talked about, and so that they were almost blocking or preventing certain things or slow walking things. How different is that today, and how should we think about that?
I wrote in Axios on Monday that his incoming chief of staff was a campaign co-manager, Susie Wiles, who's been with him, stuck with him through thick and thin. She has the understanding of letting Trump be Trump and trying to execute on his vision and hiring people who are loyal to him, loyal to his mission, and believe in getting things done for him and not undermining him. That's why, for instance, we haven't seen what we would have seen in the past, which would have been anonymous staff leaks saying, oh my God, this guy is crazy. There's no way we're going to do that. Not hearing that anymore. So that's one of the reasons that we have to take the Greenland, the Canada, and Panama pieces more seriously, is because his staff does.
Mark, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. We will see what happens, and in the meantime, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it.
We will. Thanks.
Thanks.
That is Squawk Pod for today, this Wednesday. Thank you for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern and get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears when you follow Squawk Pod wherever you like to listen to podcasts. That's it. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.